In this world, love and hatred never emerge from thin air. But when a nation transitions from a state of absolute, blinding hatred to a state of profound adoration and worship towards its conqueror, the psychology behind it is something we must look into. On August 30th, 1945, a lone aircraft named Batan smoothly touched down at Atsugi Airfield, just west of Yokohama, Japan. The entire airfield was under maximum lockdown, heavily guarded by nervous eyes, because inside that plane was the American five-star general, Douglas MacArthur. The former Supreme Commander of Allied forces in the Southwest Pacific now held a new, absolute title, Supreme Commander for the Allied Powers. Yes, he was here to take total control of a defeated empire. Yet, as this battle-hardened general stepped toward the cabin door, even he felt a sudden wave of tension, because intelligence reports had warned him that Atsugi Airfield was still packed with radical Japanese combat units. A desperate group of extremist pilots had openly declared they were waiting for the perfect moment to perform a final settlement with the Allied commander. During the bloody final chapters of the Pacific War, the American military machine had completely shattered the Japanese defense with overwhelming, brutal power. From the meat grinders of Iwo Jima and Okinawa to the relentless firebombing of Tokyo, and finally, the atomic ashes of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the war had brought absolute ruin to the Japanese homeland, leaving hundreds of thousands of casualties. Of course, right-wing revisionists in Japan still choose to overlook a crucial fact today, that this entire inferno was ignited by their own surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. But back then, in the eyes of many Japanese soldiers, MacArthur, the man who orchestrated the Allied counter-offensive all the way from Australia, was the ultimate villain behind their national tragedy. With over 3 million Japanese troops on the homeland still fully armed, MacArthur's bold move to fly in solo was incredibly reckless. One spark of mutiny, and he would have been torn to pieces. To hedge his bets, MacArthur didn't land until he forced the Japanese military to strip the propellers off every single aircraft at the base, and his paranoia was fully justified. During the 13-kilometer drive from the airfield to downtown Yokohama, MacArthur looked out the window and saw a chilling sight. Lining both sides of the road stood 30,000 fully armed Japanese soldiers, and every single one of them had their backs turned completely away from his motorcade. An officer quickly whispered an explanation to MacArthur. "General, do not worry. This is how they guard the Emperor. It is a sign of highest security." But such words brought little comfort. Looking at those silent, hostile backs, MacArthur realized his mission was not just to occupy, but to rebuild. But first, he needed to break their spirit. September 2nd, 1945, 9 a.m. The formal, unconditional surrender of Japan was staged aboard the American battleship, USS Missouri, anchored in Tokyo Bay. The Allied delegation stood firm, led by MacArthur himself. Facing them was the Japanese delegation, headed by their new foreign minister, Mamoru Shigemitsu, the very man whose leg had been blown off years earlier during a bombing in Shanghai. The entire ceremony lasted a mere 18 minutes, short, sharp, and legally binding. But right as the ink dried, a spectacle of terrifying scale unfolded above their heads. Suddenly, 400 American B-29 superfortresses, alongside 1,500 carrier, roared over Tokyo Bay in tight formation. The massive fleet literally blotted out the sun, and the entire ocean seemed to vibrate from the mechanical thunder. The Japanese delegates stood frozen, staring up at the sky in absolute silence. In that terrifying moment, they finally understood. If they could turn back the clock to 1941, they would have never, ever provoked this industrial monster. MacArthur's message was glaringly obvious. You wanted to fight to the bitter end? Look up and see what absolute power looks like. Breaking the military was step one. Step two was dismantling the national psyche. In Japan, the entire collective will of the population was anchored to one single figure, the Emperor. Before the ceremony, American staff had drafted a surrender proclamation for the Emperor to sign. The document began with a standard phrase, "I, the Emperor Hirohito," to MacArthur. This seemed perfectly normal, but the Japanese officials in the room instantly turned pale, their faces twisted with subtle fury. An advisor quickly pulled MacArthur aside and whispered, "General, You don't understand. The emperor never uses the word I. He only refers to himself as the Royal WE. In that moment, MacArthur truly realized the terrifying, almost fanatical devotion the Japanese people held for this one man. He immediately issued a strict order to his entire staff: treat the emperor with utmost respect. If we insult him, we will trigger a nationwide guerrilla war. But respect did not mean compromise. To truly transform Japan, the illusion of the emperor's divinity had to be shattered. MacArthur pressured Emperor Hirohito to issue a public decree, a document that would go down in history as the Humanity Declaration. The emperor's broadcast shocked the nation. The ties between us and our people are founded upon mutual trust and affection. They do not depend upon mere legends and myths. They are not predicated on the false conception that the emperor is divine, or that the Japanese people are superior to other races. In plain terms, the God King had to look into the microphone and tell his worshippers, "I am not a god. I am just a man, a mortal, just like you." This brilliant political move allowed the military to save face, while completely destroying the mystical aura of the monarchy in the minds of ordinary citizens. However, this compromise to preserve the throne also left a toxic legacy. By shielding the emperor from war crime tribunals, MacArthur left a deep historical loophole, allowing right-wing nationalism to slowly resurface decades later. With the psychological framework shattered, MacArthur unleashed a rapid-fire series of aggressive, structural reforms across the ruined nation. First came a brand new constitution, officially known as the MacArthur Draft. It wasn't written by seasoned politicians, but by a group of young American military officers who had been idealistic lawyers before the war. They blended the best elements of American and British legal frameworks into one single document, driven by one ultimate goal: the absolute protection of human rights. It became one of the most progressive constitutions in modern history. On April 10th, 1946, under this new legal framework, Japan held its first post-war democratic election. For the very first time in Japanese history, 13 million women marched to the ballot boxes. This was a reform MacArthur fought for fiercely. He intentionally wanted to disrupt the rigid, deeply patriarchal structure of traditional Japanese society. When the votes were counted, a woman from the absolute lowest social echelon, a former sex worker, won a seat in the parliament. The traditional elite erupted in outraged protests, but when MacArthur learned she had secured over 250,000 votes, he personally sent her a letter of congratulations, stating, "Such a massive mandate could never be achieved merely by her past profession. It is the voice of the people." With politics rewritten, MacArthur turned his sights onto the economy. For generations, nearly 80% of Japan's industrial and financial wealth had been locked away in the hands of a few massive conglomerates known as the Zaibatsu, names like Mitsubishi, Mitsui, and Sumitomo. These monopolies didn't just control money, they dictated government policy. During the war, they were the heavy financial engines driving the military aggression. MacArthur didn't negotiate. He simply ordered the immediate dissolution of the Zaibatsu. He forced these oligarchs to surrender their stock packages. Half were sold directly to the public, while the other half was seized as a massive wealth tax. By turning these untouchable empires into regular, competing businesses, MacArthur injected forced vitality into the free market, ensuring they could never control state policy again. This aggressive, almost dictatorial economic leveling naturally faced immense corporate resistance. But with the ultimate backing of American military force, the oligarchs had to submit. Next came the desperate countryside. Before the war, Japanese farmland was heavily monopolized. Half of the country's arable land was owned by wealthy, absent landlords who lived luxurious lives off exorbitant rents, while millions of impoverished peasants starved on tiny leased plots. It was a feudal system that suffocated human potential. In June 1946, MacArthur rolled out a radical land reform program. Any landlord living in a village was allowed to keep only about 2.5 acres of land. Everything else was forcefully bought by the state. For landlords living away from their fields, the government seized 100% of their holdings. This land was then resold to the poor peasants through long-term, low-interest installments. By 1950, the government had forcefully redistributed 30 million acres of land, over 4.7 million farming households, representing 75% of all farmers in Japan, finally owned the soil they bled on. The economic productivity of rural Japan was unlocked overnight. Close behind these three heavy pillars, MacArthur also carried out a sweeping overhaul of Japan's education and religious systems. His singular focus was to permanently ban any curriculum or state ritual that preached absolute loyalty to the throne or fueled the fires of hypernationalism. MacArthur's radical social engineering succeeded because of a calculated combination: the heavy stick of military occupation paired with the sweet honey of massive American food aid, which literally saved millions of starving citizens during the post-war supply chain collapse. But the true catalyst came from an unexpected explosion across the sea, the outbreak of the Korean War in June 1950. As the primary staging ground for the US military, Japan suddenly became the vital frontline factory and logistics hub for the entire United Nations war effort. Overnight, billions of dollars in military orders flooded into Japanese factories. The textile, metal, and automotive industries resurrected instantly. Toyota, which had been drowning in a massive deficit of 76 million yen, received a colossal order for thousands of military trucks. Their profits skyrocketed, and the widespread labor strikes and civilian riots crippling the country vanished into thin air. During the Korean War, Japanese exports entered a state of explosive growth. In the latter half of 1950 alone, export revenues surged by 55%. The nation's foreign currency reserves, which stood at a meager $200 million in 1949, weaponized into $940 million by the end of 1951. By that year, Japan's gross national product had miraculously recovered to its peak pre-war levels. The Prime Minister of post-war Japan, Shigeru Yoshida, would later write in his memoirs, "The special military procurements from the Korean War, alongside the global market boom, gave Japanese exports a phenomenal flying leap forward." Without this sudden geopolitical windfall, MacArthur's reforms would have likely stagnated under economic misery. It was this Cold War conflict that forced Washington to completely abandon its initial plan to punish and restrict Japan, transforming the former enemy into the ultimate strategic shield against communism in the Asia-Pacific. MacArthur governed Japan with an iron fist for 6 remarkable years, until he was suddenly relieved of duty in April 1951. On the morning of April 16th, he attempted to slip away quietly. He deliberately hid his travel itinerary, notifying only a handful of top Japanese officials before boarding his car for the airport. But as his vehicle rounded the corner, MacArthur was stunned. Lining the entire route, from his official residence all the way to Atsugi Airfield, stood hundreds of thousands of Japanese citizens. They had gathered spontaneously in the morning chill. 6 years earlier, these very people had looked at the American general with murderous hatred, viewing him as the destroyer of their civilization. But now, as his car passed, the massive crowd erupted into a unified, thunderous chant, "Daigensui, Daigensui." The Great Marshal, looking out at the weeping faces of the people he had conquered, the battle-hardened general, broke down and wept. Douglas MacArthur lived a life defined by grand theatrics and historic gamble. History remembers his military triumphs, his crushing defeats, and his brilliant tactical returns. But the chapter he cherished most, the achievement he boasted of in his final memoirs, was the 6 years he spent reshaping a broken empire. Against all expectations, this arrogant, old-school military general took a nation reduced to radioactive ash and under his iron watch, allowed it to rise, vibrant, wealthy, and completely reborn. On April 19th, 1951, during his legendary farewell address before the United States Congress, MacArthur uttered those immortal words, "Old soldiers never die, they just fade away." And perhaps that is the truth. The warrior fades, but the nation he built from the ruins stands as his eternal monument.